Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise and do powerfully command thee, O Spirit. Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise and do powerfully command.
In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Abracast. I am your host, Dr. John Towers. So, we've been discussing at length the birth. We've been discussing Western civilization, right? Specifically, the birth and the impending death of Western civilization. Western civilization is being held down and pegged with no lube. It's coming to a screeching, crashing halt. It seems to me like there is some hope for us, but not a lot. The deck is stacked against us. And this is what we're going to be talking about this evening. So this topic is giant, and I have no plans on spending any more than just this one episode sort of talking about it specifically, mainly because people are starting to wake up and everyone is starting to talk about this. God, it had to be probably 2 years ago for the Patreon, for back when I had Patreon, back when I gave a shit about the Patreon. I cut together a bunch of audio and I set it to Duran Duran's Reflex. So it was like the reset. So we're going to be talking about Klaus Schwab, Joe Biden, John Kerry. We're going to be talking about the business leaders, the world's elite. We're going to be talking about them and their plan to fuck us all in the ass. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I'm John Towers. This is the Abracast. We're recording tonight in the Red Lodge. This is the place where we're going to go to watch the decline and eventual manufactured destruction of the West. I'm accompanied here by my vessel of the art, which is currently housing, filled to the brim. It's filled to the brim with the mother's milk. A fine-tuned weapon of mass distraction, my Jin Jihad. So let me get the party started the correct way, and we will be on our way. Yowza. All right, so this whole thing, as far, we're starting it. So this idea came to this guy named Klaus Schwab back in the fucking 70s. I mean, I'm sure it's an idea that's been around in one form or another. And, I've sort of vacillated a little bit lately, about the true sort of, the jinn be letting you know where evil lurks. And up until pretty recently, I thought that communism was the big problem. Well, it turns out that I think communism is just a useful idiot. And the real fear, the real bad guy is something a lot closer to fascism. So ever since I started the show, I've been threatening to do an episode to define fascism. And I never got around to do it because it's not a sexy topic. Everybody thinks they know what fascism means. And usually they confuse it with militarism or militaristic nationalism. But fascism, because they mix it up. So an easier way to say it, a more easily understood way to say it might be that they mistake fascism, the word fascism, for Hitlerism, right? Some Mussoliniism, something like that, where the fascism is nothing but it's a form of it's sort of a form of socialism. Well, we see that in the National Socialist Party, aka the Nazis. But fascism is what we're going to be talking about a lot today, because whenever nowadays they don't call it. I mean, everybody calls everything fascist nowadays. But what these guys talk about when they start talking about their stakeholders and public-private partnerships, that is really fascism. Fascism is the government and the big businesses getting in bed together to move the needle. So this is what we see in like big tech. So the government is limited by law, but is limited by the First Amendment. So it can't censor anybody. It can't censor the public. It's enabled to do that because of the First Amendment. So this is just sort of like a clip, like a little microcosmic example of this public-private partnership. So what happens is big tech goes, hey, the government's limited. They can't shut these motherfuckers up, but we can. So they write some bullshit in their terms of use or whatever, and then they just, what they've been doing, shadow banning, just straight up cutting shit, letting their algorithms sync, episodes of podcasts or people with dissenting views or whatever. So this is a sample of this public-private partnership that we're going to be hearing a lot about this evening. And that's what this conspiracy is about. It's about the elites running businesses and running government, shaking hands and working to redistribute and restructure everything. Literally every fucking thing. If this episode goes on long enough, I found this article, and so I'll just highlight it because I don't know if I'm going to get to it. It's called "Get Ready for the Plate Reset" instead of the Great Reset. So a genius wrote this, but it's all about how they're going to rework, how Davos is going to rework food security. And they're talking, they actually talk about redesigning plates. They're talking about redesigning soil. They're talking about redesigning, plants. So, this thing, it's like a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are like, it's bullshit, conspiracy theories, whatever. Just keep an open mind about this as we go through it, because I have it in, it's easily found in these people's real fucking words, and when they're talking about it, they're using language, and they're not setting up they're not giving us the definitions that they're using for their words. And so everyone's just like, oh, okay, yeah, it sounds great. This really sounds like a good idea. And we don't have one single fucking politician out there explaining this shit to us. We don't have anybody going, hey, so this is really what it means when they say this. Hey, man, this is really what a stakeholder means. It doesn't mean you. So we're going to start with this thing, like I said, Klaus Schwab in the 70s, but he's written a couple books, from what I understand, those are pretty shitty. But he runs this thing called the World Economic Forum, and this is where this whole sort of rocket takes off. So I'm reading from the World Economic Forum. It's called weforum.org/great-reset. I would try to read this like Klaus Schwab, but I don't really do voices very well. There is an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. To improve the state of the world, and the World Economic Forum is starting the Great Reset Initiative. So here, let's break this down real quick. What the fuck is a stakeholder? This is like the third time already that you've said the word stakeholder. A stakeholder is a party that has an interest in a company and can either affect or be affected by business. The primary stakeholder in a typical corporation are its investors, employees, companies, and suppliers. However, with the increasing attention on corporate social responsibility, the concept has been extended to include communities, governments, and trade associates. And this is from Investopedia.com, by the way. Key takeaways: a stakeholder has a vested interest in a company. It can either affect or be affected by a business, operations, and performance. Typical stakeholders are investors, employees, customers, suppliers, communities, governments, or trade organizations. The entity stakeholder can be both internal and or external to the organization. So here is a little bit of Klaus Schwab, and then we're going to cut to Prince Charles, and this is them talking to each other. This is them talking to the other people at the World Economic Forum. This is them talking to other elites. This isn't them talking to us. So check out this guy. Everyone's like, he's right from Central Casting. That's what everybody says about him. Oh my God, he's a Bond villain. Just give him a cat and he can be a Bond villain. So here, just to say up like what this guy is like. Here we go.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
No one ever elected this fucking reptilian to do anything. So the way that this started with a conversation about climate. And it has all the climate problem buzzwords, right? Sustainability. It's got to be sustainable. And so what happened is when COVID was released, or when COVID happened, or whatever the weird shit regarding COVID spreading the pandemic bullshit, they jumped on this. And they jumped on it hard. And the reason they did is because all of the stuff that they got away with during COVID, they're going to use it all again. You're going to see this. And another thing that this is talking about, besides, lockdowns and passports and all this other shit, is this the weird thing that's happening with the housing market and inflation. And the rush to roll out some sort of digital currency. So crisis is going to happen. The banks are going to be locked down, and they're going to roll out some sort of digital currency. And when that happens, people that have money usually wind up taking like a 40% beating. So every dollar that you have when they roll out this digital currency will basically be worth 60 cents. And on top of all the rest of the bullshit is, this ESG business, the environmental, I mentioned this in the last episode, the environmental, social, and governmental score. So, if, say my liver starts rotting out, right, which is a probability I can live with. So my liver starts rotting out and I become a drain on the system. So what will happen, it's like fucking like Logan's Run or some sort of shit like this. What will happen is my ESG score will reflect that, and they will be able to put controls on it, like my Bitcoins or whatever, my Fed coins or my dollar coin, dollar.com coins or whatever it's going to be, like won't be able to work at a liquor store. And that will be a way for them to step on my neck. So, when they don't want you traveling, your shit will work at a bodega down the street. But if we're not going to be able to have gasoline cars anymore anyways. Anyhow, they're going to be able to super limit travel this way. And that's what all this shit is talking about, is all this crazy shit. So back to it, the context. We're back to the World Economic Forum. This is why I love conspiracy theorists that are like, the Earth is flat. The moon is a fake construct. It's a hologram. Like all of this shit is fun, but you don't need it. You don't need it to find some conspiracies. So the context, the COVID-19 crisis and the political, economic, and social disruptions it has caused is fundamentally changing the traditional context for decision making. The inconsistencies, inadequacies, and contradictions of multiple systems, from health and financial to energy and education, are more exposed than ever amidst the global context of concern for livelihoods, and the planet. Leaders find themselves in historic crossroads, managing short-term pressures against medium and long-term uncertainty. So this gives us an opportunity as we enter a unique window of opportunity to shape the recovery. This initiative will offer insight to help inform all these determining the future states of global relationships and directions of national economies, the priorities of societies, the nature of business models, and the management of global commons. Drawing from the vision of the vast expertise of the leaders engaged across the forum's communities, the Great Reset Initiative has a set of dimensions to build a new social contract that honors the dignity of every human being. By the way, you better check your white privilege when they lock the banks down and start rolling out digital money, because it's going to be based on your ESG score. So, it depends on your privilege. You might get 40% or 50% or 60%. So it's not all, but I'm not going to click these links and read more into it. I think we got the picture. It's creepy. This fucking guy, his name is Antonio Gutierrez. Listen to this shit.
That is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate, and rebalance our world. Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
Fundamental to building the future that we need. So here's another brilliant part. They have marketing material. So this one is set to this globalist music. It's happy. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read what this fucking commercial says. And just try to think, this comes right from the World Economic Forum, and just try to imagine what someone's life that lives, forget the happy music going on in the background, and just try to figure out what kind of nightmare your life or someone else's life is going to be / would be in this reality. So it starts off with this music, and then the first thing it says is, "You'll own nothing. And you'll be happy. Whatever you want, you'll rent. And it will be delivered by a drone. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. A handful of countries will dominate." And they show a couple different flags. The U.S. is there, along with Saudi Arabia. I'm sure this is China right over here. So this is it. The world is, I have forgotten the idea that the United States has any kind of moral competency anymore. I think it's ridiculous to argue that ethically or morally we have any sort of high ground. But that's not it. The idea is now that there's going to be like the Legion of Doom of like a handful of world superpowers. Like we're going to figure out all the evil shit the governments can do by committee. And this shit is, to me, this is terrifying, and this is censorship. This is what's happening to the economy. This is what's going on with COVID. This is what's going on with the media. This is it. This is what's going on in our schools. I thank God I don't have kids, man. I look at this and I think, whatever God you want, Harpocrates, I thank them all. I thank every God that I don't have a child, because to live in a world where you don't own anything and you'll be happy and you rent and like subscribe, everything is going to be a subscription service. It's awful. And I'm not even a materialist. My wife and I own a very small house. We don't drive expensive cars, but the cars are ours. The house is ours. We have computers that are ours. We have the TVs and things that belong to us. And I mean, the idea that everything is going to be rented or subscribed, and, this is what's happening to the housing market. And I feel like I feel like the topic is too massive, and I think that's part of the power of it. Like, that's why that people can be like, that is bullshit conspiracy theory, because there's nothing that is this crazy. And I think it is. I think that this is that crazy. I think it's that crazy. Just listen to the words that are coming out of their mouth. Read the words that are on their commercials. So there's a bunch of code words and slogans that they use. All you Biden supporters out there, his campaign slogan, "Build Back Better." Well, guess what? Build Back Better was not invented by Joe Biden. It wasn't even invented by one of his people. It wasn't even invented by a think tank. It was invented by the World Economic Forum. So there's all these code words. Like, you could do searches. I've been trying to stop saying the G word. Or the Y word. You can do you can do searches and find supercuts of all these people in all these various languages talking about Build Back Better. And it's not about Joe Biden and the United States of America. It's about the Great Reset. Same thing the same thing is, if you spend enough time looking at this, you'll hear them talk about the fourth industrial revolution. So let's talk about the industrial revolutions for a second, so we can understand the scope of change that we're talking about, the scale of change that they're talking about when they talk about the Great Reset as the fourth industrial revolution. So we're jumping onto a law website called lawaspect.com. The first industrial revolution is often referred to as the egalitarian revolution, when farmers and country people moved into the city to work in factories. The development of the steam engine was an essential early element of the Industrial Revolution. However, for most of the period of the Industrial Revolution, the majority of industries still relied on wind and water power as well as horse and manpower for driving small machines. Factory work, small firms, and the free market made up the first industrial revolution. So think of that. Think of the change that we're talking about. People going from farm life to moving to the cities to work in factories. Think about the magnitude of change that they're talking about. Now let's talk about the second industrial revolution. So the markers, some of the markers of the second industrial revolution is they saw new scientific knowledge in medicines and drugs. Medicine in the first industrial revolution was not properly developed. Once infection set in, nothing was possible to save the patient. Various diseases couldn't be stopped or controlled because of limited technology. In the 1850s, however, vaccinations were discovered and administered. X-rays were also discovered and provided doctors with a faster way of diagnosing medical problems. Great new industries were founded on the scientific advance. We're talking about steel. We're talking about chemicals. We're talking about petroleum benefited from new understandings of chemistry, breakthroughs in the study of electricity and magnetism that provided the basis for large electrical industry. These new industries were large and more productive than any industries existing before the first industrial revolution. The government was more involved in workers' rights throughout the second industrial revolution. So again, I'm going through these because I want to kind of talk about the scale of change, the magnitude of change. Imagine going from the first industrial revolution to where if you hurt yourself and you get an infection, it might fucking be over for you. And here we go. Just one short industrial revolution later, we're talking about antibiotics, we're talking about medicine, chemicals. Yes, we discover ways to make electricity ubiquitous. Imagine your life without electricity. Now think of your life with electricity. That's the magnitude of scale that I'm trying to bring attention to. So we only have one more, and then I'll stop harping on this industrial revolution business. So let's talk about the third industrial revolution. Oh, whatever. The third industrial revolution is from analog to digital. They call it the digital revolution. It's the shift from mechanical and analog electronic technology to digital electronics, which began in the latter half of the 20th century. The adoption and proliferation of digital computers and digital record keeping that continues to this present day. So I admit and I recognize that I am old, and one of the things that being this old provides to me is that I remember the world before the internet. Fuck, I remember the world before computers. I remember getting a Commodore 64 for Christmas, and I had to hook it up to my giant fucking thick ass television. And I would try to write code on it. I remember the world before the third industrial revolution, and the scale of this change again is it's enormous. When we talk about net neutrality, I'm going to put it in perspective for just a little bit. When we were talking about net neutrality on the show, I would bring this up that, hey, I remember when Vice President Gore invented the internet. Like, I remember when it happened. Like, I used to sit around and wait for like 20 minutes for like a static picture of a blowjob would like come. It would start as like this fuzzy block, and as it like rendered through like the beeper internet, it would become more clear, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I just waited 20 minutes to look at a static picture of a chick doing a blowjob. Great. You know, think about what that means right now. Think about how ridiculous that is right now. At home, waiting till my friends crashed. I didn't have the internet. Waiting for my friends to pass out, so I could sneak on their computer and download one blowjob. I could download 4 blowjob pictures every hour. That had to have been in like 1992, maybe 92 or 93, something like that. But think about how ridiculous that is right now. Think of the magnitude of change. Think about what we do in our world that doesn't involve an internet. That's what we're talking about, bro. This is the magnitude of change Klaus Schwab is talking about when he's talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Here he is.
The fourth industrial revolution will impact our lives completely. It will not only change how we communicate, how we produce, how we consume. It will change actually us, our own identity, and of course gives life to such policies and developments like smart traffic, smart government, smart cities. What we will see is that everything will be integrated into an ecosystem driven by big data and driven particularly by close cooperation also of governments with business, civil society. And this revolution will come at a breathtaking speed. It will be like a tsunami.
Like a tsunami.
Like a tsunami. So I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit to read this thing, because you're like, what do you mean it's going to happen fast, like a tsunami? And this is kind of riffing off of my screed that I did like maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago, where I got off track and I was talking about the hippies and how they really fucked everything up. Like, they literally, besides music, I guess you can make that one argument. Besides music, they really fucked everything up, and they're still fucking it up to this day. All of the a vast majority of the bad actors that are in Congress are from this generation, and they just keep fucking us over and over again. So this is an article on climatedepot.com, and it's about John Kerry, who's our climate czar. And he says the Great Reset will, with greater speed and with greater intensity than a lot of people might imagine. So John Kerry, the Great Reset will happen, and I think it will happen with greater speed and with greater intensity than a lot of people might imagine. In effect, the citizens of the United States have just done a great reset. We've done a great reset. he's talking about the elections, and it was a record level of voting because it was all fake. What astounds me is that as many people still voted for the level of chaos and the breach of law and order with breaking the standards. The notion of reset is more important than ever before. I personally believe, Bourget, that we are on the dawn of an extremely exciting time. I believe no government is fundamentally going to make the climate crisis go away. Government's best effort is going to be to create a structure which will make it possible for certain things to happen. What are the certain things? Mr. Hines? Mr. Hines, what are the certain things? The next opportunity for that structure to be fully defined is at the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow. So these quotes are noteworthy for a number of reasons, but perhaps the most important is that Kerry makes it clear that Biden himself supports the Great Reset. He uses the slogan in his campaign, and then under a Biden administration, that the reset will happen with greater speed and greater intensity than a lot of people might imagine. Who is he? No one elected him to do anything. John, Mr. Hines. So continuing talking about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, here's this guy. He's a talking head news dude in Australia, I believe, on Sky News, and think about what's going on in Australia. A few episodes ago, I clearly think that I recall that I was talking about how America's letting the government push us around with these lockdowns and these ridiculous masks and all this other kind of stuff. And I was like, and Australia, bro, like, what's up with them? Like, I thought that they had, like, thongs and mohawks and fucking, like, muscle cars and shotguns. Like, I've discovered that my whole idea of Australia is like from Mad Max, from the real Mad Max movies, like the 3 Mad Max movies. And I'm like, they got muscle cars in the desert with like leather jackets with like the shoulder like pad and like secret keys and shotguns and all this stuff. And then you're like, you look at them and they're like, they send drones out to tell people that they have to stand farther apart, and they are locked down and they can't walk farther than like a block away from their house. And it's all this crazy bullshit. And the reason I'm revisiting this specific piece of information is because it fits in what this dude's about to talk about here.
That is an order. It gets worse. The World Economic Forum are now blatantly saying capitalism needs a dose of Marxism. As I say, it's not like they're hiding their sinister intentions.
So on the screen, it flashes flashes an article from the World Economic Forum, and it literally says, "Capitalism does capitalism need some Marxism to survive the fourth revolution?"
Indeed. I was horrified when an outsider fan last week sent me this document from the Australian government. Quote, "Preparing for the future, Industry 4.0 test labs in Australia, a strategic initiative of the Prime Minister's Industry 4.0 Task Force. Section 1, Significance of the Fourth Industrial Revolution." Unbelievable.
It clearly says the context and significance of the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
So, may I respectfully remind the Prime Minister there is nothing in the Great Reset that is in Australia's national interest. Australians did not vote for a dose of Marxism in our capitalism. Speaking of Marxists, on this show this year, we also brought Dan Andrews' insidious Belt and Road dealings with Communist China to national attention.
So the Belt and Road is a program, it's like an outreach program that China has to develop undeveloped countries for develop infrastructure for undeveloped countries to aid in their logistics. I don't know, because I'm so immersed in this stuff all the time. I don't know if when you hear Belt and Road, you know what that, specifically everybody knows what that means. So I just felt like I had to interject.
Thanks to my exclusive interview with US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, which led, as I predicted last week, to the passing of the government's foreign relations bill. Again, congratulations to the Prime Minister and the government for that one important piece of legislation.
I feel like that's sarcastic. I feel like he's being sarcastic. Bros, I'm running out of time. I didn't know it was going to take this long. So here's Klaus again. I don't want to be too heavy-handed with this, but I feel like when people hear about the Great Reset, they're like, oh, okay, well, like they're going to move some money around. Like they've been moving money around forever. At least since COVID, they've been sending money, printing money like crazy and just sending it everywhere. Okay, the Great Reset. Okay, we're sustainable energy. The Great Reset. Solar energy. We're going to have solar energy. Listen again to this fun little recap. This is Klaus Schwab talking about the magnitude of change the Fourth Revolution is going to have. Check it out.
It's at the end, what the Fourth Industrial Revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
So, where's the spiritual part of it? I guess we're just leaving that part out, boys. How do we feel, you guys, the Order of the Abercast? How do we feel about leaving spirituality out of the future? It's a question, right? It's a question. So here we go. I'm not going to get to this redesigning the plate nonsense because we're going to stop off here at thenewamerican.com. So this is a little bit more politically biased than I like to get when I do when I find articles for the show. These guys are obviously right-leaning, and I try to make that an editorial aspect, meaning me reading the stuff versus it being baked into the article. But we gotta listen to what the New American has to say here. It's good, and it's all about President Joe the Plugs Biden pushing the Great Reset. And so we also have to gloss over a little bit here about the level of just corruption that this guy has. And you're like, wait, what? Uncle Joe, lunch pail Joe? Corrupt? What are you talking about? And this is what I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. Go to Abercast.com, go to the featured topic link, find the section. We have a whole little section on Joe Biden. And it doesn't have anything to do with Hunter's laptop. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with Hunter's laptop. It has to do with the fact that he's a plagiarist. He's a liar. I believe he's a dunce, even when he was cognitively effective at some level. But here we're just going to be talking about an article that Senator Joe Biden wrote. He wrote an op-ed called "How I Loved to Love the New World Order." He wrote this on April 23rd, 1992. Wow, a lot of 92 references here. Boop, boop. The Wall Street Journal published an op-ed from then Senator Joseph Lunch Pail Biden, the Scranton Kid, entitled "How I Added All That." Entitled "How I Learned to Love the New World Order." In that piece, Biden extolled a collective security through the United Nations and called for arming the UN with permanent commitment of forces for use by the Security Council. Why not breathe life into the UN Charter? Biden asked, not mentioning that the same life-breathing action for the UN Charter would mean toxic death for the United States Constitution, which he has taken an oath repeatedly to uphold and defend, not to mention that it also be the death knell for American sovereignty, independence, and freedom. remember, the United States isn't going to be the only superpower. We're going to have the Legion of Doom like committee of superpowers. Where does Joe Biden's catchy globalist memes, New World Order, Build Back Better, Fourth Industrial Revolution, The Great Reset? Here's a clue. They don't spring full-blown from the feeble cerebral cortex of the president. He's a sock puppet for the international oligarchy that lusts to rule. As many of our writers here at the New American have been pointing out for decades, the catchphrase New World Order, NWO, Hulkamania, brother, is a mantra used by globalist elites worldwide, including Democrats, Republicans, communists, and socialists. Communists and socialists. I love it. I love it. What kind of music do you play in this bar? We play both kinds, country and Western, signifying their vision of a one-world government, the Tower of Babel, under the United Nations and its ancillary agencies. And as the writer pointed out in his 1992 book, Global Tyranny, Step by Step, the United Nations and the Emerging New World Order, the expression New World Order has a long history emanating from the Council of Foreign Relations and its British sister institute, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and known at the Chatham House, just for one example out of the many in Global Tyranny. This author cited an article from the spring of 1991, Foreign Affairs, the official house organ of the CFR, entitled The UN in a New World Order, authored by Professor Bruce Russett and James S. Stufferlin. The CFR promoted article especially endorses proposals to provide the United Nations with vast new military assets and peacekeeping forces. This has been the stock in trade for the globalists since World War II and the founding of the United Nations. We got to build back better. We got to build back better. Build back better. Build back better.
It's a very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
My plan to build back better.
His plan.
Start taking all the problems that have been created in education and mental health and start to build back in a positive way.
I have launched a booklet called Build Back Better, written after coronavirus.
It's about building this country back better.
Growing conspiracy following it. It is called the Great Reset.
An unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live.
The great opportunity for reset.
The theory even calls Mr. Biden's campaign slogan, Build Back Better, a front for the conspiracy.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Build back better.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
Conspiracy.
So that's the best one. Okay. So, like I said, I know this is sort of low-hanging fruit for the show because everyone is talking about it. But I felt like since we've kind of taken on this role of examining Western civilization, that we might want to see discuss this a little bit. And I didn't even get through like half of the bullshit that I was supposed to get through for this, so maybe there might be another follow-up. Probably, let's be truthful, there's probably going to be a follow-up to it. Anyhow, I hope I didn't scare anybody too bad. I hope all this information's out there, and like I said, everyone's talking about it, so this just might be a nice summary for some of you. Anyhow, I'm John, this is the Abercast, and please check out abercast.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
I gotta go rebuild my
drink. And we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please send an email or find us on social media and let us know what you think about the show. We would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rate and review wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find Stigmata Studios, graphic, novels, and comic books. Take control of your destiny. Understand your past. Put your present in context and know your future with a twist. Check out the Abercast Tarot card deck. Your body is your temple. So let's make sure you got a badass t-shirt on it. Variety of cool occult themed t-shirts. And other merch like stickers, wall art, mugs, and more. Welcome to the Red Archive. Get access to over 50 hours of archived episodes. More bonus audio. Additional exclusive content. All this for only $1 a month. Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at abercast.com.